In many situations in life, we have to say goodbye. So did Moses. And as it happens often in life, when there is a farewell, when there is separation, great men make speeches. So the last of the speeches by Moses in Deuteronomy is his farewell speech. You can compare it to the farewell speech by Joshua in chapter 24 in the book of Joshua, inspired by Moses, and maybe also to the farewell speech by Paul in Milet in Acts 20, or some of those farewell speeches by Jesus himself. I'm Dr. Paul Petersen. Welcome to yet another tidbit from the Bible. We are in this particular quarter, the last of 2021, inspired by themes from the book of Deuteronomy, the last of the 5 books by Moses. In this, Moses speaks, and we are going to read his final words. Chapter 30, verse 19 in the speech that covers chapter 29 and 30. This day, he says, I call heaven and earth as witnesses against you that I have set you before life and death, blessings and curses. Now choose life, so that you and your children may live and that you may love the Lord your God. Listen to his voice and hold fast to him. For the Lord is your life, and he will give you many years in the land he swore to give to your fathers, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. Reading from New International Version. In verse 15, he says, See, I set before you today life and prosperity, death and destruction. So he closes with an appeal. Let's look at this appeal in the light of first Deuteronomy itself, and next in light of all the 5 books by Moses, the Pentateuch. And finally, a little word about this appeal in the context of the Gospel and the whole Bible. This is the last of Moses' 3 speeches. The first covers the first 4 chapters, roughly speaking, and the next from chapter 5 to 28, and now it is a conclusion. As we read, we realize that Moses, in a sense, in his appeal, summarizes the whole appeal of the covenant established by God with the people. This is what you are to do, to follow, to stay in the covenant. You have a choice. You have a choice to make. You have seen all the laws. You have seen how God, in his love, has led you out of Egypt. Moses has appealed, he has motivated. He has not only repeated the law, he has explained the whys. Why are you to do so? He has motivated by pointing to the love of God, the mercy of God. Compare verse 7 and 8 in chapter 7. It was not because you were a great people, but because he loved you. And now this is in the summary. But as we read this appeal, we should realize that this is also linked to the major theme in the Pentateuch, especially to major themes in Genesis. Now, think about the curses and the blessings. This is an important motif in Genesis. What happens in creation? God blesses the first couple, but then because of sin, they experience the curses. And only from chapter 12 and onwards, the blessings return. Abraham is given blessings, and he is asked to become a blessing. And in his seed, all nations, all peoples of earth will be blessed. Now, as God established his covenant with the people, the purpose of that covenant was also to make this people a blessing to all other nations. In chapter 4, when Moses gives his appeal in his first speech, this is one of the major parts of that appeal. Look what will happen. All other nations on earth will notice the blessings you have received by following the laws of God, and they will realize the wisdom of this great nation. And they will come and they will learn about God through that. So, the blessings and curses in Genesis is establishing a theme that is now continued in Deuteronomy. It is possible for the people, according to the appeal of Moses, to become such a blessing to the world when they experience the blessings that God will bestow upon them if they stay within the covenant. Now, that leads to the next major theme that connects Deuteronomy with Genesis. I have set you before life and death, curses and blessings, or blessings and curses. Life and death certainly is a major motif of Genesis. God created the first human beings and gave them life. And because of sin, they came to experience death, and they came under the government authority of death. And Genesis ends with death, the death of Joseph. Pentateuch ends with death, the death of Moses. Life and death. Now, as you look further, you will realize that there is a parallel between the experience in the Garden of Eden and the experience of Israel. Notice, God placed Adam and Eve in a perfect garden. And he's going to place the people of Israel in a land flowing with milk and honey. They have a choice between life and death, a tree of life or a tree for knowledge of good and evil, and they made the wrong choice. So Israel will, as it is implied and even mentioned directly in these last speeches by Moses. So Adam and Eve were expelled from the Garden of Eden, and the people of Israel will enter their promised land, but because of their apostasy, they will be removed again. And here comes the unique example of the mercy of God. In this final speech, Moses makes clear that it will happen. This is a prophecy. But then he gives hope. Let's read from chapter 30. When all these blessings and curses I have set before you come upon you, and you take them to heart wherever the Lord your God disperses you among the nations. And when you and your children return to the Lord your God, returning here is conversion, with all your heart and with all your soul, according to everything I commanded you today, then the Lord your God will restore your fortunes and have compassion on you and gather you again from the nations where he scattered you. In other words, the experience of Adam and Eve in the Garden of Eden is in a way repeated in the future experience of the people of Israel. But the promise is that if they return to God and pray for forgiveness and pray for his mercy, he will listen. He is merciful, he is compassionate, and they will be able to return. In Daniel chapter 9, when Daniel prays his long prayer of confession, he actually quotes from Deuteronomy. And he uses this particular section to say, this is now what I'm doing. I'm doing what you ask us to do. We are in exile. We're dispersed among the nations. Please forgive us and let us come back. So with this parallel in mind, let me then return to the broader context. There is, of course, a difference between experiences blessings as an individual and as a corporate people. The promises of the blessings to the people of Israel are given to the people as a corporate group. So are the curses. Daniel and his friends experienced the curses even though they were not personally responsible for the sins of Israel. In my personal life, I may not experience all the blessings that the corporate people could have experienced if they followed God. But I have one blessing when I return to God. When I make the choice that is implied by the appeal. And that is the closeness of God. That is forgiveness. Let's read. Because when Moses appeals to the people to take their choice, make their choice, he is not saying that we as human beings, by our choices, win God. No, what he's saying is that when God comes near to you, you have the choice. You have the choice because he has come near you in his mercy. Let's read from this last wonderful speech by Moses, verse 11 to 14 in chapter 30. Now what I am commanding you today is not too difficult for you or beyond your reach. It is not up in heaven so that you have to ask, who will ascend into heaven to get it and proclaim it to us so we may obey it? Nor is it beyond the sea, so that you have to ask, who will cross the sea to get it and proclaim it to us so we may obey it? No, the word is very near. It is in your mouth and in your heart so you may obey it. When Moses in his first speech in chapter 4 verse 7 appeals to the people, this is one of the points of appeal, that you have a God that has come near to you, who is close to you. This particular verse, section of verses from Deuteronomy 30 are quoted also by Paul in Romans, indicating that my choice is not because of my own achievements, it's because when God in his mercy comes to me, a sinner, and offers me forgiveness and offers blessings in life, he does so in mercy, not because of me. I can choose, I have the freedom of choice, only because he has come. My freedom of choice is due to the fact that God has come near us as a Savior in Jesus Christ, the seed of Eve, the descendant of Abraham, the Messiah, the Savior. Thank you for listening to this tidbit inspired by themes from Deuteronomy, and welcome back for another tidbit next week. Thank you.